mysteries.
We all have an instinct to check the locks before going to sleep. It's a small ritual to keep the dark out. But in the freezing winter of 1922, locking the doors of a remote farmhouse offered no real protection. The nearest neighbor was miles away. If someone was outside, nobody would hear a cry for help over the wind. 6 people lived on this property: an older couple, their widowed daughter, her 2 young children, and a live-in maid. They maintained a quiet existence, keeping their distance from the local village. One morning, the father walked out into the snow and noticed something strange. A single set of tracks emerged from the dense tree line. He followed them with his eyes. The footprints led directly up to the walls of their home. But when he looked for a trail leading back toward the woods, there was nothing. Whoever made those tracks hadn't gotten lost or turned around. They had walked directly toward the building and stayed. The threat had successfully breached the perimeter. Over the next few weeks, the house began to turn against its owners. A set of keys vanished. A strange newspaper appeared. Nobody had bought it. It was from miles away. Every single night, the psychological pressure inside the house intensified. The family lay in the dark, listening to heavy, dragging footsteps moving slowly across the wooden ceiling boards directly above their beds. And sometimes, in the dead of night, they heard muffled whispering. The father climbed the stairs to search the attic multiple times, but he never found anyone hiding in the shadows. The invisible terror broke the family maid. She packed her bags and fled, convinced the property was haunted. The silent intruder acted exactly like a parasite. He used the physical structure of the home to memorize their lives. He listened to their routines, noted when they slept, and learned exactly how to isolate them. By the time the final day arrived, the household maintained its daily rhythm. The children went to school, and the adults worked the farm. A replacement maid even arrived to start her first shift, completely unaware of the threat hovering right above her head. That evening, after the sun went down, the trap sprang. One by one, 4 members of the family were drawn out into the freezing darkness of the barn. We still don't know what lured them. A noise, a cry for help? Whatever it was, it worked. Inside the barn, the intruder attacked with overwhelming violence, executing them silently. With the adults dead, the killer calmly walked back into the main house and killed the new maid and the youngest child while they slept in their beds. Eliminating an entire household of 6 without a single neighbor hearing a struggle requires extreme precision. The weeks spent watching through the floorboards paid off. The killer knew exactly how to move through their space. Most murderers panic and run the moment the violence ends. This person stayed. For days after the massacre, the killer lived in the house. He cooked meals in the family's kitchen. He kept the fireplace burning to stay warm. He even walked out into the snow to feed the surviving livestock, tending to the animals right next to the barn where he had hidden the bodies. It took nearly a week for the silence to draw attention. The children missed days of school, mail piled up outside, and neighbors finally investigated. They uncovered a brutal, frozen scene that required authorities to transport the bodies to a medical examination room for autopsies. Criminal profilers point to this post-murder behavior as the most chilling aspect of the crime. The person responsible was entirely detached from human empathy. They transitioned from a vicious attacker into a temporary resident, comfortably making a home among the dead. The local police arrived quickly, but they couldn't secure the area. News spread, and a terrified, morbidly curious public descended on the property. Villagers walked through the house, moved items, and trampled the snow, crushing any remaining tracks. In 1922, investigators didn't have DNA profiling or advanced fingerprinting. They relied heavily on undisturbed physical scenes. By the time detectives started formal interviews, the most critical physical evidence was already gone forever. Detectives chased down hundreds of leads. They suspected wandering criminals, angry relatives, and former employees. But the lack of forced entry pointed heavily towards someone who either knew the layout intimately or had spent weeks learning it from the attic. The extreme isolation of the farm, combined with the accidentally ruined crime scene and the killer's cold planning, created the perfect conditions for a clean getaway. The culprit simply vanished. The physical structure of the farmhouse was eventually demolished. Yet more than a century later, true crime researchers, historians, and internet sleuths are still trying to piece together the surviving documents. The obsession with this case comes from the central, unanswered question. The physical evidence proves someone was hiding in the ceiling, but we still have no idea who he was or why he chose them. Somewhere, a real person walked away from that blood-stained snow. He blended back into society, lived his life, and carried the memory of those final nights to his grave without ever being caught. This mystery endures because it touches on our oldest anxieties. It reminds us that the things we should fear most aren't supernatural. They are very real people, waiting patiently in the dark spaces right above our